May the divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Peace, peace, peace. So happy to see all of you online again. Slowly, this virtual seeing is becoming more real. And I don't know when we'll actually be able to, whenever we see each other in person, whether that will be more real than this, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But until then, we live in a world of seeing each other in these tiny little squares on our screens. So our topic for this weekend retreat is learning through stories. How we can learn and grow spiritually through stories. And one thing that we have all seen is that the greatest teaching in history have always been given through stories. Many of the teachings in the Upanishads as well, it had a story at the background. You know how Kathopanishad has the story of Nachiketa and Yama. And similar stories are there in Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and so on. But also in the Puranas, and of course, Mahabharata and Ramayana is filled with stories. When we come down to the teachings given by great saints, great prophets, and avatars, all of their teachings were also mostly done through stories. So we have another class of teachers who have written commentaries and so on. So we call them acharyas. They are not so much into telling stories. Not that they have never told, they do, but the emphasis is on philosophy, on abstractions. A lot of people may find philosophical abstractions intellectually stimulating, but for many others, it just doesn't move the heart. And something that goes straight to the heart is a story. So we find that the greatest among teachers, starting right from, you go to Gautam Buddha, you see Jesus Christ, you see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramakrishna, all of these great ones filled with stories. And those who come after them then have tried to put their teachings on a philosophical way. It's easy, as I said, to reach one's heart through stories. But it's also important to remember that while stories are almost always interesting, it depends on the storyteller also, but through the apparent simplicity of the stories, the message that they convey, the teachings that they give is often very profound. So I thought this weekend, instead of taking up some scripture or again going into some philosophical abstractions, it might be helpful to focus on 2 or 3, or whatever number of stories come to mind. So today we had the opening song on Rama. So it'll be good to have a story related to Rama. So this is a story about one character in Indian spiritual tradition who is very familiar to pretty much most people, even if you have not read any scriptures, and that is Narada. Narada is a very interesting person. He's a great devotee of God. He has this whole book called the Narada Bhakti Sutras. So people who want to study what bhakti is have often studied Narada's Bhakti Sutras. He's a great scholar, but more than that, what we see, the picture of him that comes to us today is of one, and you might remember even through Amar Chitra Katha or even the TV versions of these different stories, Narada will be going with this veena around him and say, Narayana, Narayana. And in the Puranas, he is also seen as, they sometimes call him Kalahapriya, one who will kind of go and carry stories from one person to another, and apparently one who starts fights or creates misunderstanding. But then in retrospect, oftentimes, almost always, it is found that he's not just setting up fights among people just for the fun of it. Because almost always, this way of doing things, which in the beginning might not look such a saintly and a nice thing to do, often turns out it's done for a good purpose. So there are all these different facets to Narada's personality. One thing, as I said, the popular and a well-known aspect of Narada's life is that he goes everywhere. In all the, often they speak about three worlds, Bhur Bhuva Swaha in the Gayatri, which comes also. So he goes everywhere, just preaching the glory of Narayana. Not only does he go everywhere, he just can't stop in any one place. Now, why did this happen? So there is a story that Narada was a profound scholar, as I said, was appointed as a tutor to teach the children of Prajapati, Brahma, with 4 children. And Narada, because he's such a great Pandit, so Prajapati said, come and teach my children. Now, Narada, while he taught them, he filled their mind with so much renunciation, so much tyaga, so much vairagya, that all of them said, we are just going to go to forest and meditate. We have no interest in this world. We have no interest in samsara. And they all left. Now that got Prajapati worried. He said, now, if this Narada goes on telling like this, teaching like this to all the people all over the world, then this Srishti cannot continue. Everybody will go to the forest and start meditating. So then he said, something must be done. And so he actually gave him a curse. And the curse that was given to Narada was, you will not be able to stay in any one place for a long time. But the danger was, if he stayed in one place, he'll start giving this Vairagya Upadesh to everybody, and people will lose interest in the world. So better, just move from place to place. Don't stay in a single place. And that's how then, all that he would go is go somewhere, drop down somewhere and said, Narayana, Narayana, and say something, and then maybe have tea or coffee and then move to another place, not wait for a long time. Now, when he was on this long travel, a non-stop travel through this universe, one day he was passing by the Himalayan area. And of course, all of us know how beautiful the Himalayas are, how spiritually uplifting the Himalayas are. So when Narada saw that, he came to one spot in the Himalayan region. It was beautiful. Everything, with the whole nature was still. There was this snow peaks everywhere. And he just felt like just sitting there in one place and meditating. He just couldn't, he just said, this is what I want to do. So he stopped there and started meditating. And he went into a deep meditation. And he sat there for hours and hours and hours. Now that was something amazing. Even for Narada was surprised. But because of that curse, he could not stay in one place for a long time. But now he was just sitting in that one place. So he thought the curse is gone. Now I have conquered that curse. I'm all this in this one place. And he was really enjoying, just remaining immersed, thinking about Narayana. Now, as it often happens in our Puranic stories, when somebody starts meditating too much, the first person who feels insecure is Indra. Indra is considered the king of the gods. And the idea is someone who is accumulating a lot of punya, that person be the next Indra. And so Indra feels his position becomes insecure when he finds someone is now really doing a lot of tapasya. So Indra said, and sometimes as you know, in some of these TV or movie versions, they'll suddenly show Indra's Simhasana is kind of going this way, just to kind of very visually make it clear that it's very unstable now. And so one of the things that one kind of a very common trick that all these people do is when someone is in deep meditation and you don't want them to continue with that tapasya, then you have to send some temptations. Because as all of us know, in our own efforts at meditation, how often we get distracted. So Indra said, I need to create a distraction for Narada. So a common distraction, of course, was to send the apsaras to then start dancing around there, and the Gandharvas with musical instruments, and create a lot of beautiful noise and sound and dance. And so they all, of course, it's an order of Indra, so they had to obey. So all those people went, and where Narada was sitting meditating, they went and started this song and dance around him. So Narada was in deep meditation, so he didn't even hear it for the first time. Then after some time, he suddenly heard the sound of the music around him. He also saw there were all these beautiful apsaras singing and dancing around him. And he was smart. He immediately knew that Indra has trying his usual mischief. And his first instinct was to get very angry. And also fear that what if I get distracted, then my meditation will end. But to his amazement, no sooner this thought came to his mind, it went away. And the sound and the music and this thing stopped distracting him. He again entered into a deep meditation. So these poor Gandharvas and Apsaras, I mean, how long will they sing and how long will they dance? They also started getting tired. But this Narada's meditation is not getting stopped. So now they were just carrying out orders. So they thought, well, we are just carrying out orders. Nothing will happen to us. But when they saw how profound Narada's meditation is, then a different kind of fear entered into their mind. They felt, this is really a very great yogi. Now, if after some time when he opens his eyes, and if he finds out that we are the ones who have come to now distract him, then he may curse us. And if he curses us, we have no hope. So they were terrified. So after some time when Narada opened his eyes, all these Apsaras and Gandharvas went and fell at his feet. And then said, please forgive us, forgive us. Nothing very personal. We didn't have anything against you personally. Just Indra sent us. We were just carrying out his orders. They're just trying to save their own skin. And Narada sees everything. And he says, okay, not to worry, not to worry. I'm not angry with you. I'm not going to punish you for anything. Go in peace. I have nothing against you. I have nothing against Indra also. I have no anger. Go. And so they were very happy that finally no curse was given. They did pranam to him and they went away. So now Narada is left alone there. Up to this point, everything has gone just as it should. But see, this is how the mind works. Now Narada is sitting there alone. Narada is thinking, wow, this is quite an achievement. I was given the curse, I won't be able to sit in one place, and I have sat here for days together. So I have conquered that curse. Then all these people were sent to disturb my meditation, and I did not get angry. I have conquered anger. You remember in the Gita, there is a verse which says, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Kama, desire, and anger are our greatest enemies. So Krishna says in the Gita, one who has conquered anger, one who has conquered desire, such a person will become enlightened. There are no obstacles in the path of such a person to become enlightened. And so Narada says, there you go. I did not get angry. And all the beautiful apsaras dancing around, my mind, no lust came into my mind at all. No karma came into my mind. So I've conquered karma also, conquered desire. And therefore now, Narada was trying to be modest, but he thought, I am probably the greatest person in the world, because all our scriptures say, if you have conquered anger, conquered desire, you are the best. And so he said, yes, and felt very happy about it. Unfortunately, all of this had happened in some remote part of the Himalayas. And normally, if you do something good, if you achieve something well, you want people to see it. You want people to appreciate it. And here, no one had even noticed it. Other than these Apsaras and Gandharvas who came, no one had even noticed it. So Narada felt a little bit, but like his worth is not being recognized fully. But he felt the first person he said, I need to go and speak with someone and tell them what had happened to me. So he goes to Kailas and to meet Shiva. And so Shiva welcomes him, because Narada is well known. He's a well-known person. So Shiva says, oh, Narad Muni ji, aiye, baithiye. He just says, makes him, please sit down here. And then he says, what news? What brings you here today? And then Narada says, well, I was passing by. I thought I just dropped by. And by the way, I was passing by Himalayas and this is what happened. And it looks like I have conquered my anger and my lust. So what do you think? And then as if we just like casually just dropping by what happened to him. And then Shiva says, he said, that's wonderful. That's a very nice thing that has happened to you. But Shiva says, you know what? Now that you have taken all this trouble to come and tell me what happened to you, which is okay, which is good, don't go and tell it to anybody else. And so Narada says, why is he saying don't tell it to anybody else? Because, that's how when our ego comes up, our mind starts thinking in a very different way. They say, there is a saying, Vinasha Kale Viparita Buddhi. That when we have time has come for self-destruction, then our mind starts thinking in a completely different way. But at that time, the mind justifies it. The mind feels that that's the right way to think. So Shiva is thinking, why should Narada, he's thinking, why should I not tell to others? And then he felt, I think Shiva is jealous of me. Because up to this point, people used to think of Shiva. Of course, Shiva doesn't seem to have too much control over his anger. Any little thing, his third eye will open and go. But at least in Shiva's case, he has great control over his lust. In fact, when Kamadeva tried to tempt Shiva, Shiva opened his eyes, third eye, and burnt that Kamadev to ashes. And so Narada thought, this Shiva, how can he appreciate my greatness? He has no control over his anger. And so he said, definitely he's afraid that his reputation as the best person who has controlled all this will go down if world comes to know about it. So he said, no, I'm going to tell. Shiva again tells him, see, I greatly appreciate what you have done. Don't go anywhere. Don't tell them. Especially don't go to Narayana or Hari or Vishnu. There's the same names. So Vishnu is sometimes called Hari, sometimes as Narayan. Don't go to Mahavishnu and don't tell him this. And then so Narada takes leave of him. And then next he heads toward Brahma. He thought, it's good that all the Trimurtis, they know. They're thinking they are the greatest ones. But they should know what there are other people also who can do a lot of things. So he goes to Brahma and says, I did like this. And then Brahma says, oh, Narad ji, bahut acha kiya aapne. Wonderful, you are great. It's very nice. But he said, you already told to Shiva. You told me also. What's the point? Why are you going on telling people like this? You are great. We all know you are great. No need to go and tell anybody. And especially don't go and tell Mahavishnu. So then this Narada is thinking, why are they again and again telling me don't go and tell Mahavishnu? And the human nature is that if you're told don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, that's exactly what you want to do. So Narada then next straight headed toward Vaikuntha. He went to Vaikuntha, and then Mahavishnu, who was, of course, in this lying down in that Sheshashahi Bhagwan, he's lying down there, and Lakshmi Devi is massaging his feet. And so Narada goes there. From the door itself, when Narada sees Mahavishnu in that position, Narada says, how this is not the picture of one who has conquered everything. He's just lying about in this luxury, being served. There's no renunciation in him at all. So this is the thought that is going on in his mind. But externally, he goes, he just bows, namaskars, does namaskars to Mahavishnu. But inside his mind is thinking, oh, even Mahavishnu is not free from this desire for comfort and luxury. Now, Mahavishnu, who can read everything, what is going on in people's mind. Yeah, but Mahavishnu says, oh, Mahavishnu gets up from his seat and then bows down and welcomes Narad Munichi and says, please come. How blessed I am that you are visiting our home. Now, in normal circumstances, whenever Narada would meet Vishnu, if Vishnu had got up from his seat and said something like that, bowing down and saying how grateful he is that you are visiting our home, Narada would have been shocked, because Vishnu is his all in all. He is his servant. But now this Narada is different. Ego has come up. So he just thinks completely normal for Mahavishnu to get up and offer him a seat. So he sits down. And then Mahavishnu says, what happened? And then Narada said, by the way, we're passing by this Himalayan region. And then he narrates to him the whole story. And so Mahavishnu says, oh, that's very good. You are truly, truly a wonderful person. And then Mahavishnu said, okay, now that you have told me this, I appreciate it. No need to tell anybody else now. Everybody's telling him, don't tell anybody else. So after having told all this to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Narada says, now my next goal is to go and announce it. Unfortunately, there was no social media during that time. Otherwise, if Narada had a Facebook or a Twitter account, that's what he would have done. But he didn't need that. He could go from one world to another world, Triloka, simply go. And so he thought, my next goal is to go on a whistle-stop tour of the entire universe, meeting people, just like this at the time of campaigning, our politicians do, and kind of telling them how wonderful he is. And so he started going everywhere. Earlier, he would go and preach Narayana's name, Narayana, Narayana, ask people to meditate on God. Now, he says Narayan, Narayan, but next will be an hour-long talk about what happened in the Himalayas and how wonderful he is. So as he was going, suddenly he passed by a very place he had never seen before. A place filled with gold. And Narada was surprised because he has gone around the universe so often that he thought he had seen every part in this universe. He felt there was nothing he had not seen. So suddenly now he sees this one place. He's very curious. What is this one place? I've never been here. And so he's seeing, he lands there. Then he sees it. It's a wonderful kingdom. Beautiful trees, roads paved with gold, people are happy. And then there's apparently getting ready for some celebration, some kind of celebration. So he asked somebody on the street, what's going on? What's the matter? And then that the people in that kingdom say that the princess of that kingdom is come of marriageable age, and so they are going to plan a swayamvara. In those olden days, they used to announce a day, and then when the princess is ready for marriage, then all these other royal princes from different places, they would come, they would gather in one place, and then the princess would get to choose whom she wants to marry. So they were getting ready for a date for Swayamvara. And so he was very curious. And the news quickly spread that, oh, the great Devarshi, Narada, has arrived. And it reached the palace. The king himself came out and welcomed Narada inside. And so Narada said, oh, I'm so happy. This is my first visit to your kingdom. I've seen everything else, but I've never seen this place before. And I'm very happy to see how wonderfully you have managed everything. And I hear that you're getting ready for Swayamvara. And he said, yes, and now your great sage like you has come. Could you please bless us? As it happens, whenever there is some big ceremony at home or a marriage ceremony, etc., and then the parents want that everything should go smoothly through God's grace. And so they often seek the blessings from holy people. And so now this big sage has come. So the king said, please bless my daughter who will be married soon, who will be participating in the Swayamvara ceremony. So will you please? Then Narada said, of course I will bless your daughter. So then they call the princess, her name is Vishwamohini. So the princess comes out. And as soon as Narada sees the princess, his jaw drops. He had never seen a more beautiful girl in his whole life. He's amazed. And she comes and bows down to him. And then the king, her father, says, could you please bless her? And Narada blesses her. And usually it was a kind of a popular idea then, and it's a popular idea even now, that holy people apparently know your future. They can forecast your future. They somehow have knowledge of astrology. And so they said, could you please see this girl's hand, read the palm of the girl and see whether she'll get a good husband? And Narada says, sure. And so Narada had knowledge of astrology. He was such a great, intelligent, and well-read person. So as soon as he took that princess's hand and started examining her palm, he found that she will marry the greatest and the best person in the world. That the person she marries will be filled with all the qualities. And as he was reading that, he's narrating, he said, you're going to get a wonderful husband. A husband who is like filled with the best qualities and probably the greatest person in the world. And of course, she is happy. The king is happy to hear it. And even when Narada is narrating this to them, in his mind he's thinking, if it's the greatest person with the best qualities, who could that be? And then, of course, he says, of course it's me. because it's already, even I've gone and confirmed this by going to Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, and they all have admitted that I've made some great achievement. So Narada, then he didn't tell them that, But in his mind, he thought, oh, these people don't know. I'm the one who is going to marry her, but they don't know yet. Anyway, he just confirms again when that Swayamvara date is and says, okay, I will come. I will come then. So the date of that Swayamvara date arrives. And so then the description we read in the story about how this big hall, the main darbar, there it is filled, and then on two sides, all these great princes from different kingdoms have arrived, along with their assistants, who will now sing their glories to try to tell the princess that she should marry this prince. And so slowly, one by one, that whole hall is getting filled. And Narada then also goes. Nobody was really expecting Narada to be attending the Swayamvara, but he suddenly showed up there. And so, well, what can they do? So they said, okay, they give him a seat. He finds that when he enters that palace, two people have been following him. And again, they are kind of whispering something, laughing at him, making fun of him. And he has no idea who those fellows are. They're just following him everywhere. So when Narada goes and sits in that hall, these two fellows also go and stand in one corner and start, it can be very unsettling. If you go to some place and you find two or three people are looking at you and whispering something, then you can feel like, what are they talking about? Are they talking about me? Anyway, so that was Narada's experience. Finally, that whole hall is filled, and then this princess comes with a big garland. And then the procedure is, she will pass along that row where all these princes are sitting. And as she comes in front of every prince, his assistants who are there, they will introduce the prince and say all wonderful things. Oh, he's so brave, and he is this, and he has achieved, he has got so many scholarships, he has done this, he has got so much training. They will say all these things. And if the princess likes it, she will put the garland and finish. That's it. Decision is made. So, and if she doesn't say, not impressed, then she'll move on to the next one. And the next person will then describe what it is. So that's the procedure. So then she's coming. And Narada is somewhere far down that line, sitting there. So she comes one after the other. No prince, she is not impressed by anybody. Although wonderful people are there, she is not impressed by anybody. So she comes. When she comes before Narada, she doesn't even stop. She is so disgusted looking at him. She just kind of looks and with disgust turns her face and then moves on to the next prince. Narada is shocked. He's like, what? Just 2 days ago I came, you did pranam to me and you were so happy that I came. And now you don't even want to look at me? He didn't say all that, but he was like, and then he found not only this princess, he found a lot of other people. Everyone is like looking at him and smiling, looking at him and smiling. And that can be very unsettling also. If you go to some party or something and everyone looking at you and smiling and not telling you why they are smiling or just kind of whispering about you. Now, Narada got extremely uncomfortable because everyone seemed to be making fun of him. He had no idea what was going on. He's totally puzzled. Slowly, one by one, she passed by all these different princes. And then she didn't garland any of them. And just as she finished that last prince she had passed by, suddenly the main door opened. And this Garuda, Mahavishnu himself came flying on this Garuda and landed there. And Mahavishnu stood there at the door. And this princess, she ran and put the garland around Mahavishnu. So Mahavishnu then lifted her up, put her on that Garuda and flew away to Vaikuntha. And everybody's like, wait a minute, what happened now? This is like completely like like a sudden surprise. Now, of course, the whole hall got dispersed And Narada, in his mind, Narada is furious. Narada, especially furious because if Mahavishnu himself has come there and taken away. So Narada is thinking, you know what? This is Mahavishnu's conspiracy. He had this desire for this girl. That's how somehow he did something by which this girl wouldn't marry me. So he was like extremely angry against Mahavishnu. Then these two, remember I told you two people who were following him everywhere? So those people come closer to him and now they started looking at him like this and making fun of him. And Narada, who just up to this point had been accustomed to only receiving respect and reverence for everyone, never ridicule. So he told these people, told these two fellows, why are you following me? And why are you making fun of me like this? Then those two fellows say, go and look at your face in the mirror first. See how you look. Now, what had happened was that before going to Swayamvara, because that thing which Narada had seen on the palm of this princess, it said that she will marry the greatest person in the world, but also the most beautiful person in the world. Now, Narada had no doubt that he is the greatest person because he had already achieved that great thing at the Himalayas. But he had a little bit of doubt. Am I really the most beautiful? Because all his life he has meditated on Mahavishnu's face. So he thought, Mahavishnu is Narayana is the most beautiful person. But now he thought, well, then there's no hope for me. So what he had gone before this Swayamvara, he had gone to Vaikuntha and again dropped by and then told Mahavishnu, would it be possible for you? You see, one thing that you have given me so much in life. There's one desire I have. And Vishnu said, for what? What do you have? And Narada said that I would like to have your beauty of your appearance. In fact, in the Vaishnavas, one kind of mukti is called sarupya mukti, to get the same rupa as Bhagwan. So Narada said, I'll be very blessed if you give me your form, or at least lend me your form for a few days. And then, of course, Narayana says, of course, you are the greatest devotee. Granted, tathastu. And so, Narada is very sure now he is the most beautiful person. He's already the greatest person. And now these fellows are telling him, go and look at your face in the mirror. Then he says, what's wrong with my face? So, of course, in those days, I don't know whether there were mirrors or not. But usually people could look at their face in still water. The waters were not polluted then as they are now. So you could see a very clear reflection in any water of a lake or a pond or a river. So there was this small little pond outside. So Narada goes and looks at his face in that pond, in the reflection. What he finds was actually his appearance was that of a pig. And then he understood why everyone was laughing, why everyone was making fun, why the princess didn't even want to look at him. She felt like insulted that this this pig has come, why even expecting to marry me? And then he realized this is definitely some conspiracy done by Mahavishnu. He had the desire to marry this girl, and he did this. So he then said, now I'm going to go to Vaikuntha and demand explanation. So, filled with anger, he goes to Vaikuntha. And then he says all sorts of things to Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu says, what happened? What happened to you? He says, what happened? You are the one who took away that girl who I wanted to marry. Now you see, that whole kingdom was really created by Mahavishnu himself from his own Shakti. So that princess was his Shakti. And where will God's Shakti will go with God, not with anybody else. So it was like obvious. But so Mahavishnu said, why are you getting upset? And so, but when we are very angry, we are very upset, we have no idea what we do and what we say. That's the problem with anger. As long as we are aware we are angry, the anger is under our control. But the moment that anger overtakes us, then it's no longer under our control. Then we are no longer aware of our anger, we become the anger ourselves. And in that state, what we say, what we do, there is no control over it at all. And later on, of course, we know that once we cool down from our angry state, and then later on we regret what we have said or what we have done. Later on, then we feel, or I should not have said that. I should not have done that. So Narada at this point was extremely angry. So what Vishnu was saying, he was in no mood to listen. So Narada then, in this anger, cursed Mahavishnu. Just imagine Narada cursing Mahavishnu. And Narada said, look, you have brought so much pain to my heart. You have brought so much suffering. This one girl I loved so much, and you have separated me from her. You will experience that same kind of separation, the same kind of suffering. I curse that you will suffer in your life in the same way. And Narada then said, Vishnu said, Tathastu. Because Vishnu, see, that's the greatness of God. God loves the bhakta so much that no matter what unreasonable demands we make, because of that love, God says, yes, I will do it for you. And so Mahavishnu said, yes, I will do it. And it is so that his devotees' words should remain true, so that his curse should not be, that his curse be fulfilled. Then Mahavishnu himself decided to come down as Rama. So the Rama avatara, the Rama incarnation occurred because of the curse that Narada gave to Vishnu. That is why the Sita was kidnapped by Ravana. And then we read in many versions of Ramayana how deeply affected Rama was, how much he suffered when Sita was away. So that suffering that Rama had, that was in fulfillment. That was voluntarily accepted by Mahavishnu for the sake of his devotee Narada, who had cursed him. So when Narada cursed, once Narada cursed and in that anger, those two other fellows, remember, who were following him, he cursed them also. You fellows, you have been enjoying all this drama, making fun of me. You will be born as Rakshasas. You don't deserve a human birth. You'll be born as Rakshasas. So those two fellows were born as Ravana and Kumbhakarna. See? Now, as soon as this curse was given by Narada, then suddenly he became normal again. His mind calmed down. When his mind calmed down, then he realized what he had done. So he asked for forgiveness from Mahavishnu and said, please forgive me. I don't know, like an idiot, I was saying all these things. Because he realized, he began by thinking, I've conquered anger and I've conquered desire. But once he saw this beautiful princess, his conquest of desire was gone. Once again, desire had entered into his heart. It got so angry, he got angry with God himself. So he was not conquered anger. And then Mahavishnu said, don't worry, I bless you. He says, remain humble. Don't be proud. Don't be egoistic. Sometimes a little something we achieve in life and we become proud. Then our condition will become like Narada. And that is when Narada said, no, I'm withdrawing my curse. And Mahavishnu said, no, don't withdraw it. I will honor the curse. And that's how Rama came. That's how those two, no, you might ask who those two fellows were who were following him. They were actually attendants of Shiva. So when Narada had gone to meet Shiva in Kailas, that time they were there, and of course they adored Shiva because they were his loyal companions. Now when Narada goes and tries to show that he's even better than Shiva, they are mad. But they also know that something will happen and his foolishness will be big. That's why they were following him, just to see, make sure that Narada's foolishness will be exploited or will be revealed. And so they were very happy when this fellow who came apparently to insult our boss, Shiva, now he has been taught a lesson. Anyway, so they were born as Kumbhakarna and Ravana. So you remember Ravana's story. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva because that's who he was. So that was also a part of the curse. So Tulsidas, the song that Gautam sang in the beginning was from Tulsidas. And this story also occurs in Tulsidas's Ramayana. So he explains, why did Rama avatar come about? And so this is one way. Now, this is not the only story connected with it, but this is one interesting story about how Rama avatar came. But apart from that, the journey through which Narada goes itself also shows us what relevance it has in our own life. That sometimes we might think, oh, I've achieved this, I've achieved that, or I've conquered this. And so quickly, ego can come into our heart. Sri Ramakrishna says, this I, aham, ego is so strong that someday you will find, oh, amar to ahankar ekebare nahi, chole geche. I have no ahankar at all. And then he says, very next day, suddenly you try to uproot a tree, and then next day, suddenly something comes up again. So we can be sure only when this ego is completely removed from root. If you try to cut the ego, a next thing will again come up again. So we have to be careful that our own life doesn't become like Narada. Now, Narada, this is not to pull down Narada. Narada is a very great person, and we are eternally grateful to him. But to recognize that if such a thing can happen, even in the life of these great saints, then ordinary people like you and me, we have to be really very humble. Recognize that, yes, we will achieve victories in life. But if we don't remain humble, then we will lose whatever we have gained. Our condition will become like Narada. So there are these nice lots of things we can learn about the danger of pride, the beauty of humility, and all of this. And then, all the advice that Narada got in the beginning from Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu was for his good. When they were telling him, don't go and tell others, if he had just followed it, right in the first instance, when Shiva told him, don't go and tell others, if he had not gone about telling, he would have been saved. But he didn't take that advice. So we have to be alert. A lot of times when we seek guidance, we seek help, whether from elders in our family, from our friends, or from the people we trust. We don't have to follow anything blindly. We have to use our brains. We have to use our heart. But pay attention to whatever guidance and instructions you have received from those whom you trust, and try to follow them, because otherwise our condition could be like Narada. So these are some of the ideas that come to my mind about this story. So if you have, and what are the kind of thoughts that come to your mind after reading this story? What are the kind of lessons that you think you have learned from this story? So I'm not asking that you ask me some questions. All that I'm saying is, Hearing this story, what kind of thoughts come to you? What do you think you learned? Or do you think this story is helpful? Or in what way do you think that story has helped you? So keep it brief.